So hi, this is Marty Malinzak from the NASA Langley Research Center. My co-author Linda Hunt and I are going to talk about the assessment of solar cycles from Earth's perspective. We've titled this talk, Are We There Yet? Because it's still not clear from Earth's perspective if we have really reached the minimum of the current solar cycle 24. So by way of outline, we're going to begin by just looking at some solar cycle related metrics, basically the sunspot number. And then we're going to take a high-level view of the effects of the solar cycle on Earth's thermosphere. Particularly, we're going to look at the effect on the thermal structure. And then from there, we'll look at infrared radiation emitted by the thermosphere as a diagnostic of solar activity. And we have 18 years of measurements of these from the NASA TIME satellite. From there, we're going to proceed to compare infrared radiation and sunspots and see whether they line up in the occurrence of solar maxima and minima. And then we'll revisit this question of are we there yet with respect to the occurrence of the solar minimum of solar cycle 24. Okay, this slide shows on the left-hand side about a 60-year record, 66-year record of sunspot number, monthly sunspot number for the past 6 solar cycles, 19 through 24 is indicated there. And there's a couple things you can notice. It looks like overall, with time, the sunspot number intensity is decreasing. Back in the late 50s and early 60s, we had a very strong solar cycle, followed by 20, which was a little bit weaker, and then stronger. But then since 21, 22, 23, and 24 have been getting progressively weaker. And the sunspot number, if you look up here on the upper right-hand side of the figure, you'll see the 2 images, one from 2000, when we had solar maximum, and the face of the sun is peppered with sunspots, versus 2009, I think this is March 2009, when we had essentially a blank sun and a very deep solar minimum. So sunspot variability is indicative of variability in the solar radiant and particulate, the solar wind output. And what we want to really understand is what are the tangible effects of this variability on the Earth and its atmosphere. So we're going to take a quick look now and discuss a bit about energetics and the effects of the solar cycle on Earth's thermosphere. And this figure you've probably all seen one way or the other in one form or another. It's a figure from the classic textbook of aeronomy by Peter Banks and Gaston Coquartz that was published back in the 70s. And its purpose really is to represent the dramatic effect of solar activity on the thermal structure above 100 kilometers. When the sun is quiet during solar minimum, the thermosphere is cold and essentially isothermal above 150, 200 kilometers. But when it is, the sun is active, the thermosphere can be very hot, as high as 2000 Kelvin. And so what we like to investigate is how we can better quantify these effects and understand them through things we can measure like sunspot number or through infrared radiation. Now, the response of the thermosphere, as we've said, is driven largely by externally input energy from the sun, and that comes in the form of solar ultraviolet radiation, and it also comes from variations in the solar wind, and the solar wind gets coupled into the thermosphere through the magnetosphere. The particles are deposited, and depending on the orientation of the solar wind and its magnetic field, we can have a large effect from the solar wind or no effect at all. So it's quite variable, but it does produce tremendous effects on the thermal structure and the chemical composition of the upper atmosphere. Now, it's not just the inputs that you have to be concerned about, of course, it's the redistribution of energy and ultimately the outputs. And one of the main ways by which energy in the thermosphere gets redistributed once it's input is by heat conduction. And particularly above about 200 kilometers, the atmosphere is not dense enough to radiate significant portions of energy, significant amounts of energy. And so the only way for the energy to get out is by conduction, and it goes down the thermal gradient from the hot regions to the cold regions. And there's also, though, this is a very interesting region in the atmosphere where the tides and waves, as indicated here by the blue arrow, from below can propagate up and also influence this part of the atmosphere. So it's very interesting, it's very complex. But ultimately, energy really only gets lost from the atmosphere by infrared radiation. And that's really the key diagnostic that we want to look at here. There's 2 major mechanisms, major species that radiate. Nitric oxide radiates at 5.3 microns, and carbon dioxide, CO2, radiates at 15 microns. Nitric oxide is really interesting because it's not only is it very temperature sensitive, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but it's also chemically active. And so during more active times on the sun, we have a more active chemical process, and we have more nitric oxide in the atmosphere and more infrared radiation. And when it's not active, the sun is not active and it's cool, there's a lot less nitric oxide and a lot less nitric oxide radiation. So this region here between about 150 and 200 kilometers, we call the heat sink region. That's where the energy, as I said, it comes down by conduction. It gets down into the part of the atmosphere where there's enough density to radiate, and so the response of nitric oxide and CO2 are critical in determining how the upper atmosphere responds to solar activity. And so now we're going to take a little bit closer look at that. Let's take a look at infrared radiation from the thermosphere, which is a key diagnostic of solar activity, and it shows the Earth's response to solar activity. And so in this slide, what we show is infrared radiation from nitric oxide, and this has been measured over the past 18 years now by the TIME satellite, and in particular the SABRE instrument. SABRE carries two channels for measuring nitric oxide emission and CO2 emission, specifically for this purpose. How does the upper atmosphere respond to solar inputs, solar variability, and how does the energy balance, the infrared part, the output, how is that driven and varied with solar activity? So the first thing I want to say is that infrared radiation from nitric oxide responds very sensitively to temperature. It goes as e to the 2700 over T, where T is the neutral kinetic temperature. And so these figures here show the global flux of energy from nitric oxide over a period of a few days from a geomagnetic storm event back in April of 2002. And these were measured by the SABRE instrument on the TIME satellite. Over here on the left side, everything is pretty much blue. There's not much activity going on. The infrared radiation levels are pretty low, and I think this was April 12th, 2002. Over here on the right, we have just 3 days later, during a moderate geomagnetic storm, the infrared radiation levels have increased tremendously. And this is a polar stereographic projection of the southern hemisphere. You can kind of see Africa, and then in the lower portion here is New Zealand and Australia, and the peak in the infrared emission is going right where the magnetic pole is here, right around the magnetic pole. But clearly there's been a tremendous response in just a period of 3 days as the atmosphere is heating up, more nitric oxide is being produced, and we see what we call this thermostat effect, where nitric oxide is really trying to help shed all this energy that's coming in through infrared radiation and then bring the atmosphere back to its original state. So a key question that if we're going to look at infrared radiation as a diagnostic of solar activity, we want to look at that and how does that compare with sunspots? Do they have the same occurrence? And what we found is no, they don't. Infrared radiation does not have the same peak in its occurrence versus the sunspot peak in occurrence. And they can be up to 1 year difference in the maximum. And what we show, and that's going to be on the next slide, we show a figure here that's been, it's a combination of SABRE data, and it's a combination of reconstructing basically the SABRE record back into the 1940s. And so what we show here in the green curve at the very bottom is the time series of nitric oxide emission. And this is a globally averaged power, the amount of energy emitted every day by nitric oxide from the thermosphere, going back to again, to the 1940s. From 2000 on, it's measured by SABRE, and from before 2000, it's a proxy we've developed to extend back. The red curve is the same data, but for CO2. This is CO2 emission from the thermosphere measured by SABRE. And again, it's the total daily power from CO2, and it's 2000 on, it's measured by SABRE directly, and from prior to 2000, it's a proxy. The blue curve is the sum of the CO2 and the NO, the nitric oxide emission. And then if you go up to the top of the figure, you'll see some plus signs and some X's. The purple X's are when the infrared maxima occur, and the plus signs are when the sunspot maximum occur. And you can see over the past 6 solar cycles, Sometimes the pluses and X's occur at the same time, meaning the infrared maxima and the sunspot maxima were the same. But for solar cycle 21 and solar cycle 22, the infrared maxima occurred at different times from the sunspot maxima, and they were up to about a year apart. So from the Earth's perspective and how it's responding to what the sun is throwing at it in UV radiation and the solar wind, the infrared response is a lot different than what the face of the sun is showing us through sunspots. And so we ask the question then, are we there yet? Has solar minimum occurred for the present solar cycle? And we put up this plot here. This is, again, the nitric oxide daily power, but we're showing it now just really for this last solar cycle 24 from 2006, which is summer 23, and then all through solar cycle 24 through its peak, and down here towards the end here in 2020. And I want to call your attention to the lower right-hand part of the figure, where I have these number of red arrows, and we see that the nitric oxide emission from the thermosphere is going through a series of peaks kind of regularly every 6 months here, and we have minima, but these minima appear to continually be decreasing, and we're on the downward leg again. And so I show here too, in late 2019, the minimum in UV radiation from the sun occurred, but the Earth is still having its own thoughts about this, I guess you'd say. It's not clear whether we're really at the minimum or whether the minimum we saw here in early 2020, I think this was in early January, was the minimum, or whether we're coming down to a new minimum at this time. So we really don't know whether we're there yet with, from the Earth's perspective, as to whether or not we're there with the minimum for solar cycle 24. All very interesting, and we just have to keep watching. So by summary, way of summary, the Earth's thermosphere is dramatically impacted by solar activity, particularly the 11-year solar cycle, and understanding this response is a primary focus of solar terrestrial research. It's also relevant to many applications, such as forecasting the density of satellite altitudes for their orbit predictions. That's a very critical application with the number of satellites we have up there for collision avoidance. A number of groups do satellite position forecasting, and so it's critical to understand how the sun is impacting the density and those forecasts. But currently we're in a prolonged minimum from the Earth's perspective based on observations of infrared energy radiated by nitric oxide in the thermosphere. And we don't know how long this is going to go. We do see multiple local minima in the infrared emission. It's not coincident with the UV minimum. So if we ask the question, are we there yet for solar cycle 24 minimum? We don't know yet. Time will tell. Thank you very much.